I was tightening the last carabiner on my climbing rope when I heard it. That laugh, sharp, cruel, echoing off the concrete walls of my garage like a slap. I didn't need to turn around to know it was David, my neighbor, the man who lived 3 houses down in our quiet subdivision in northern Oregon, where the Douglas firs grew tall enough to block out the sun, and the silence could swallow you whole if you weren't careful. "Steve," his voice was loud, performative, the kind of volume a man uses when he wants an audience. "You planning on scaling Mount Everest this weekend, or are you finally admitting you've lost your mind?" I kept my hands steady on the rope, my calloused fingers working the knot with the muscle memory of decades. 68 years on this earth had taught me many things, but perhaps the most valuable lesson was this: a man who mocks preparation has never truly suffered. He's never felt the cold bite of hunger, the paralyzing grip of fear when help is hours away and every second counts. He's never held the life of someone he loves in his hands and realized that all the money, all the status, all the laughter in the world means nothing when you don't have the tools to save them. Behind me, I heard more laughter. David had brought friends. Of course he had. Men like him always did. They fed off each other's mockery like vultures circling a carcass, each one trying to prove they were smarter, funnier, more sophisticated than the old man with the survival gear hanging in his garage, like trophies from a war nobody else remembered fighting. I turned slowly, letting the rope coil in my weathered hands. My garage was a cathedral of preparedness. Rows of mason jars filled with dehydrated food lined wooden shelves I'd built myself. Medical kits with tourniquets, Israeli bandages, and hemostatic gauze sat in labeled containers. Knives of every size and purpose hung on pegboards. Fixed blades for heavy work, folders for everyday carry, skinning knives with curved edges that could dress a deer in minutes, paracord in every color, fire-starting kits with magnesium rods and char cloth, water filtration systems that could turn swamp water into something you'd serve at a dinner table, headlamps, tactical flashlights, emergency radios with hand cranks and solar panels, a bug-out bag in the corner packed and ready, weighing exactly 43 pounds, heavy enough to matter, light enough to run with. David stood at the edge of my driveway with 2 other men I recognized from the neighborhood. Brad, the real estate attorney who drove a Tesla and wore designer sunglasses even when it was raining. And Marcus, the tech executive who'd made his fortune in cryptocurrency and never let anyone forget it. All 3 of them were in their early 40s, dressed in golf polos and expensive sneakers, holding craft beers with labels I couldn't pronounce. "Seriously, Steve," David said, gesturing at my garage with his beer bottle, condensation dripping onto my clean driveway. "What are you preparing for? The zombie apocalypse? A Russian invasion? Or are you just one of those guys who watches too much cable news and thinks the world's ending every other Tuesday?" Brad snorted. Marcus pulled out his phone, probably recording this for his social media followers. The humiliation was meant to be public, permanent, a digital scarlet letter marking me as the neighborhood eccentric. I could have walked away. I could have closed the garage door and gone inside where my wife Helen was probably making dinner, the smell of her pot roast drifting through the house like a memory of simpler times. I could have ignored them the way I'd ignored dozens of comments over the years, the side glances at the grocery store when I bought extra canned goods, the whispers at neighborhood barbecues when I mentioned the importance of having 3 days of water stored per person, the eye rolls when I suggested that maybe, just maybe, people should know how to start a fire without a lighter. But something in David's voice stopped me. It wasn't just mockery, it was contempt. The kind of contempt that comes from a place of absolute certainty, from a man who's never had to question whether he'll eat tomorrow, or whether his children will be safe when the power grid fails, or whether he'll know what to do when someone he loves is bleeding out, and the ambulance is 45 minutes away because the roads are flooded, and the dispatcher says to apply pressure and pray. I looked at David, really looked at him. I saw a man who'd never changed a tire in the rain, never purified water from a questionable source, never navigated by the stars because his GPS had died and his phone had no signal. I saw a man whose greatest survival challenge was choosing between streaming services, whose idea of adversity was a delayed flight or a restaurant getting his order wrong. I saw a man who would crumble the moment the fragile systems he took for granted stopped working. "David," I said quietly, my voice gravelly from years of not using it more than necessary, "I hope you never find out why I have these tools. I genuinely hope that for you." He laughed again, louder this time, and his friends joined in. "What's that supposed to mean, old man? You gonna curse me with your prepper voodoo?" I shook my head slowly. "No curse, David. Just experience. Just the knowledge that life can change in a heartbeat. And when it does, the people who prepared don't panic. They act." Right, Marcus said, still filming. "And let me guess, you used to be Special Forces or something. Navy SEAL, CIA operative." His tone dripped with sarcasm. "Combat engineer," I said simply. 32 years. Iraq, Afghanistan, places I'm not allowed to talk about. I built bridges under fire and cleared mines that could turn a convoy into a crater. I watched good men die because they didn't have the right equipment or the right training. I learned that hope isn't a strategy and that luck runs out faster than you think. The laughter faded slightly, but David recovered quickly. "Well, this isn't a war zone, Steve. This is Cascade Falls, Oregon. Population 12,000. The most dangerous thing here is Mrs. Henderson's aggressive garden gnome collection." He turned to his friends, inviting them back into the joke. "I think you can relax, soldier. Stand down. The Costco isn't going to run out of toilet paper again. And by the way, if you've ever felt misunderstood for taking precautions that others dismiss as paranoia, if you've ever been the one person in the room who thinks ahead while everyone else lives in the moment, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. It helps us share real stories about real preparation with people who understand that being ready isn't crazy. It's responsible." Now, back to what happened next. I wanted to tell him about the earthquake that hit without warning in '93, about the wildfire that jumped the highway in 2017 and turned the sky orange for a week, about the ice storm that knocked out power for 11 days and left people freezing in their own homes because they didn't have a backup heat source. I wanted to tell him that disasters don't announce themselves with a polite knock at the door, that chaos doesn't care about your zip code or your property values or how many followers you have on Instagram. But I didn't, because some lessons can't be taught. They can only be learned through pain. "Have a good evening, gentlemen," I said, turning back to my work, dismissing them the way you'd dismiss children who don't understand why adults do the things they do. I heard them walking away, their laughter fading into the distance, swallowed by the trees that surrounded our neighborhood like silent sentinels. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my driveway, painting everything in shades of amber and rust. I could smell rain coming, that particular scent of ozone and earth that told me we'd have a storm before morning. My knees ached with it, the old injury from a mortar blast in Fallujah acting up the way it always did, when the pressure dropped. Helen appeared at the door connecting the garage to the kitchen, her silver hair pulled back in the same ponytail she'd worn for 43 years of marriage. She didn't ask what had happened. She'd seen enough of these encounters to know. Instead, she just said, "Dinner's ready when you are." And her eyes held that mixture of understanding and sadness that comes from loving a man the world doesn't quite know what to do with. I finished organizing my gear, checking each item with the methodical precision that had kept me alive in places where a single mistake meant death. The knife edges were sharp enough to shave with. The fire starters were dry and protected in waterproof cases. The first aid supplies were inventoried and dated, the expired items already replaced. The water filters were clean and functional. Everything in its place, everything ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something gnawed at me, a feeling I'd learned never to ignore. The wind picked up around midnight, rattling the windows, sending branches scraping against the roof like skeletal fingers. Helen slept peacefully beside me, her breathing steady and deep, but I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle and the storm build outside. At 2:17 in the morning, my phone rang. The sound shattered the silence like breaking glass. Helen stirred but didn't wake. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand, my heart already accelerating, my body responding to years of emergency calls and midnight deployments before my conscious mind had even registered the noise. The caller ID said David Chen, my neighbor's full name, the one I'd only seen on HOA documents and Christmas cards his wife sent out every December with their perfect family photo. David, his wife Patricia, and their 7-year-old daughter Emma, all smiling like they'd never known a moment of hardship. I answered. What came through the phone wasn't a voice. It was a sound I'd heard before, in field hospitals and burning buildings, in the moments when strong men broke under the weight of something too heavy to carry alone. It was the sound of complete and total desperation. "Steve, David's voice cracked, splintered, barely recognizable. "Oh God, Steve, please, I need help. Emma's gone, my baby's gone." I was already out of bed, already pulling on pants, my military instincts snapping into place like a weapon being loaded. "Where?" I asked, my voice sharp, focused, cutting through his panic like a blade through fog. "The forest, the hiking trail behind the houses. She wanted to see the sunrise. Patricia said no, but I thought it would be fine. I thought..." His words dissolved into a sob. "We can't find her, Steve. We've been looking for an hour. I called 911, but they said the earliest they can get search and rescue out here is dawn. That's 3 more hours. She's only 7. She's terrified of the dark. Steve, I don't know what to do. I don't know." "I'm coming," I said. 2 minutes. I hung up before he could respond. Helen was awake now, sitting up, her face pale in the moonlight streaming through the window. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Be careful," because she knew, she always knew. I went to the garage. My movements were automatic, practiced, the muscle memory of a lifetime of preparation taking over. I grabbed my search and rescue pack, different from the bug-out bag, specialized for exactly this scenario. Tactical flashlight with a beam that could cut through 100 yards of darkness. Thermal monoculars that could detect body heat through dense foliage. Emergency whistle that could be heard for miles. Space blankets that reflected 90% of body heat, water, energy bars. First aid kit with splints and wound dressings. 50 feet of paracord. A GPS device with topographic maps preloaded. A handheld radio. Knife. Compass. Signal flares. The tools David had laughed at less than 12 hours ago. I was out the door in 90 seconds, moving through the darkness with the efficiency of a man who'd done this before, who'd searched for lost soldiers in hostile territory, who'd pulled people from collapsed buildings and burning vehicles and freezing rivers. David's house was lit up like a prison yard, every light blazing. He stood in his front yard in pajama bottoms and a t-shirt, no shoes, his hair wild, his face streaked with tears. When he saw me coming down the street, pack on my back, gear rattling, he ran toward me. "Thank God," he gasped. "Thank God, Steve. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for..." "Later," I cut him off. "Where exactly did you last see her?" He pointed toward the trailhead at the end of the street, where the manicured lawns of suburban civilization gave way to the wild darkness of the Pacific Northwest forest. The Cascade Ridge Trail. She wanted to watch the sunrise from Eagle Point. I was right behind her, but then I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I looked up, she was just gone, like she vanished. I've been calling her name for an hour. Patricia's still out there searching, but we can't see anything. Our phone flashlights are dying, and we don't have equipment, I finished for him. "You don't have equipment." His face crumpled. The shame was almost physical, bending him forward like a punch to the gut. "I'm so stupid. I'm so goddamn stupid. I should have listened. I should have..." "Stop," I commanded, my voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of leadership under pressure. "Guilt later. Action now. Get your wife back here. Tell her to stay by the phone in case Emma finds her way to a road or a house. Get yourself proper shoes and a jacket. Meet me at the trailhead in 3 minutes. Move." He ran. I could hear him shouting for Patricia, his voice raw and breaking. I jogged to the trailhead, my body protesting in all the familiar places. The rebuilt knee, the fused vertebrae in my lower back, the shoulder that had been dislocated twice and never quite sat right in the socket. Pain was irrelevant. A 7-year-old girl was alone in 60,000 acres of wilderness, where temperatures dropped to 40 degrees at night, where black bears foraged and mountain lions hunted, where you could walk in circles for days without ever finding your way back to civilization. The Cascade Ridge Trail entrance was marked by a wooden sign and a narrow dirt path that disappeared into a wall of Douglas fir, western hemlock, and red cedar. The forest here was old growth, dense enough that even during the day sunlight struggled to reach the ground. At 3 in the morning it was a void, an absence of light so complete it felt solid. I clicked on my tactical flashlight, 2,000 lumens that turned night into day. The beam illuminated the trail ahead, catching on spiderwebs stretched between branches, on the eyes of small creatures freezing in the sudden brightness, on the rough bark of trees that had been growing since before this country was founded. David appeared beside me, breathing hard, wearing sneakers that would be soaked through in minutes, and a windbreaker thin enough to be useless. But at least he'd tried. At least he was here. "Listen to me carefully," I said, pulling out my handheld radio and handing him a spare. Channel 7. Keep this with you at all times. Don't turn it off. If you find her, key the mic 3 times fast. I'll do the same. Stay on the main trail. Don't go off path. Mark your turns with these. I handed him a roll of bright orange surveyor's tape. Tie a strip to a branch every 50 yards. That's how you find your way back when you're panicked and turned around, and nothing looks familiar anymore. He took the radio and tape with shaking hands. Steve, I know, I said quietly. Let's bring your daughter home. We split up. He went north on the main trail toward Eagle Point. I went east, following a smaller path that branched off toward Crystal Creek, a seasonal stream that ran through a ravine. My reasoning was simple. Children are drawn to water. It's instinctive, primal. If Emma had left the trail, she might have heard the creek and followed the sound. The forest swallowed me whole. Within 50 feet, the ambient light from the neighborhood vanished completely, and I was alone in a darkness that pressed against my eyes like a physical thing. My flashlight beam cut through it, creating a tunnel of visibility in an ocean of black. I moved quickly but carefully, scanning the ground for footprints, for disturbed earth, for broken twigs or crushed vegetation, any sign that a small child had passed this way. The air was thick with the smell of decomposing leaves and moss and the rich, loamy scent of earth that never fully dried. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, its haunting cry echoing through the trees. My breath came in steady, controlled measures, the way I'd been trained to breathe in combat zones where staying calm meant staying alive. I checked my watch. 3:18. Emma had been missing for over an hour, possibly longer if David's timeline was confused by panic. Hypothermia could set in within 2 hours in these conditions if she wasn't dressed properly. And even if she was physically fine, the psychological trauma of being lost in the dark at 7 years old could be devastating. I'd seen grown men break from less. I reached the creek 15 minutes later. The water was low this time of year, barely 6 inches deep, flowing over smooth river stones that gleamed like polished glass in my flashlight beam. I swept the light along both banks, looking for tracks, for anything disturbed, for there, on the far side of the creek, a small handprint in the soft mud at the water's edge. My heart rate spiked. I keyed the radio. David, I've got something. Creek bed, East Trail. Stand by. His voice crackled back immediately, desperate. Did you find her? Is she okay? Tracks only. Continuing search. Stay on your route. Out. I crossed the creek, my boots finding purchase on the slick stones, and knelt beside the handprint. Small, definitely child-sized. Fresh, the edges hadn't eroded yet. I aimed my flashlight into the forest beyond and saw it. A tiny piece of purple fabric snagged on a blackberry bush about 20 yards ahead. My mind assembled the picture instantly. Emma had crossed the creek, maybe thinking she was taking a shortcut, maybe just following the sound of running water because it seemed less frightening than the silence. She'd pushed through the undergrowth and torn her clothing on the thorns. I pressed forward, following the subtle trail of disturbance. A broken fern frond here, disturbed moss there, the faint impression of a small shoe in a patch of soft earth. She was heading uphill, away from the creek, deeper into the forest, which meant she was even more lost than before, putting distance between herself and any recognizable landmark. The terrain grew steeper, rockier. Fallen logs blocked the path, forcing me to climb over them, my pack catching on branches, my breath coming harder now as the elevation increased. I was in good shape for 68, but this was the kind of exertion that reminded me I wasn't 30 anymore, that my body had limitations no amount of stubbornness could override. And then I heard it. Faint, barely audible over the wind rushing through the canopy above. A sound that could have been an animal, could have been my imagination, could have been... Help! I froze, every sense sharpening to a razor's edge. Emma! I shouted, my voice booming through the forest. Emma, if you can hear me, call out again. Silence. Just the wind and the creaking of branches, and my own pulse hammering in my ears. Emma, my name is Steve. I'm a friend of your daddy's. He sent me to find you. Where are you, sweetheart? Nothing. But I knew I'd heard something. I pulled out the thermal monocular from my pack and switched it on. The device hummed to life, painting the world in shades of green and white and black, showing heat signatures against the cool background of the night. Trees appeared as dark silhouettes, small mammals registered as white spots moving through the underbrush. And there, approximately 40 yards to my left and slightly uphill, was a larger heat signature. human-sized, small, curled up at the base of a massive cedar tree. I crashed through the brush toward her, abandoning stealth for speed, branches whipping across my face, thorns tearing at my jacket. "Emma, stay where you are, I'm coming!" And then I saw her, a little girl in purple pajamas and a thin jacket, huddled against the trunk of a tree, her knees drawn up to her chest, her face buried in her arms. She was shaking violently, either from cold or fear, or both. "Emma," I said softly, slowing my approach, not wanting to terrify her more than she already was. "Emma, honey, I'm Steve. I'm here to take you home to your mom and dad." She looked up. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes wide and red and filled with a kind of primal terror that broke something fundamental inside my chest. She'd been crying so hard she could barely breathe, her whole body hitching with sobs. "Are you real?" she whispered, her voice tiny and broken. "Or are you a forest monster?" I knelt down slowly, making myself smaller, less threatening. "I'm real, sweetheart. I'm very real. Your daddy called me because I know these woods, and I have special tools to find lost people. Look." I held up my flashlight, my radio, my thermal scope. "I've been looking for you for a while now, and I'm so glad I found you." "I got lost," she said, and her lip trembled. "I wanted to see the sunrise, but I couldn't find the trail, and everything looks the same, and I kept walking and walking, and I'm so cold, and I want my mommy." "I know, honey, I know. But you're safe now. I'm going to take you home." I shrugged off my pack and pulled out a space blanket, wrapping it around her small shoulders. The thin material crinkled loudly in the silence, but almost immediately I could see her body responding to the reflected heat. I gave her water from my canteen, just small sips because drinking too fast when you're in distress can make you sick. I gave her a granola bar, which she ate mechanically, still crying. I keyed the radio. "David, I have her. I found Emma. She's cold and scared, but she's okay. We're at..." I checked my GPS. Coordinates 45.387 north, 122.634 west. About a mile and a half from the trailhead. Meet us at the parking area. We'll be there in 45 minutes. The sound that came through the radio wasn't words. It was pure emotion, raw and unfiltered, the sound of a father who'd just been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. "Thank God, thank God. Oh, thank you, Steve. Thank you. See you soon. Out." I looked at Emma. "Ready to go home?" She nodded, still wrapped in the space blanket like a small silver burrito. I offered her my hand and she took it, her tiny fingers cold and fragile in my rough palm. We started walking slowly, me guiding us with the GPS, marking our path with orange tape, keeping up a steady stream of gentle conversation to keep her mind off the dark and the cold. "You know," I said, "when I was in the army, I got lost once in a forest kind of like this one. It was in Germany during a training exercise. I felt exactly like you feel right now, scared, cold, wishing I was home." "What did you do?" she asked, her voice still small but steadier now. "Well, I remembered what my instructor told me. He said when you're lost, the most important thing is to stop, stay calm and think. Panicking makes you run, and running makes you more lost. You did the right thing by staying in one place, Emma. That made it much easier for me to find you. My dad says you have lots of tools in your garage," she said. "He said they're silly." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice gentle. "What do you think now?" She looked up at me, her eyes catching the moonlight filtering through the branches overhead. "I think they saved my life." By the time we reached the trailhead, dawn was breaking. The sky had lightened to a pale grey blue, and the first birds were beginning to sing their morning songs. David was there, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, Patricia beside him wrapped in a blanket someone had given her. The moment they saw us emerging from the tree line, they ran. David reached us first. He dropped to his knees in front of his daughter, his hands hovering over her like he was afraid she might disappear if he touched her. "Emma, oh God, Emma." And then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly I thought he might crush her, and he sobbed. Not the quiet, controlled crying of a man trying to maintain dignity, but the deep, body-shaking sobs of someone who'd just stared into the abyss and been granted a reprieve. Patricia joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, the three of them forming a tight knot of relief and gratitude and love so intense it was almost painful to witness. I stepped back, giving them space, giving them this moment that belonged only to them. After a long time, minutes that felt like hours, David stood up. His face was swollen and red, his eyes bloodshot, his entire body trembling. He looked at me with an expression I'd seen before on the faces of people I'd pulled from burning buildings or flooded cars. It was the look of someone who'd just realized how close they'd come to losing everything. "Steve," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know how to. I can't." He stopped, his throat working. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said. For how I treated you. You saved my daughter's life with those tools I made fun of, those tools I called crazy. David," I started, but he held up his hand. "No, please, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "I was wrong. About everything. About you. About preparation. About—" His voice cracked. "If you hadn't been ready, if you hadn't had that equipment, if you hadn't known what to do." He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We both knew how that sentence ended. Emma was clinging to her mother, the space blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, looking between her father and me with wide, tired eyes. "I want to learn," David said suddenly, urgently. "I want you to teach me everything. How to be ready. How to never feel this helpless again. Please, Steve, I'm begging you." I looked at this man who 12 hours ago had mocked me in front of his friends, who'd filmed my garage full of survival gear like it was a freak show for social media entertainment. I looked at his daughter, safe now, but forever changed by this night. I looked at Patricia, who was crying silently, her face buried in Emma's hair, and I felt no satisfaction in being right, no vindication in their suffering. Only the quiet certainty that comes from knowing you did what needed to be done, that you were ready when it mattered, that your preparation, the thing everyone laughed at, had saved a life. "Come by tomorrow afternoon," I said quietly. 2 o'clock. Bring Emma if she wants to come. I'll show you the basics. How to build a proper emergency kit, how to navigate without GPS, how to read terrain and weather, how to stay calm when everything's falling apart. David nodded, tears still streaming down his face. Thank you so much." I turned to leave, exhaustion finally catching up with me, but Emma's voice stopped me. "Mr. Steve?" I looked back. She had pulled away from her mother slightly, still wrapped in my space blanket, her small face serious and solemn in the growing light. "Thank you for finding me. I was really scared, but you made me feel safe." Something warm and painful expanded in my chest. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Sleep well today. You earned it." As I walked back to my house, the sun broke over the eastern mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and orange. The neighborhood was waking up, garage doors opening, dogs barking, the smell of coffee drifting from open windows. Helen was waiting on our front porch in her bathrobe, a mug of coffee in her hands, her face relaxing when she saw me coming down the street. "She's home safe?" Helen asked as I climbed the porch steps. "She's home," I confirmed. Helen handed me the coffee, black, no sugar, exactly how I'd drunk it for 43 years, and wrapped her arm around my waist. We stood there together in the morning light, watching the world come alive, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. 3 months later, David had transformed. He'd built his own emergency supply system. He'd taken wilderness first aid courses. He'd learned to use a compass and read topographic maps. He'd organized a neighborhood preparedness group that met twice a month in the community center.